we don't need them to make you something to eat. You know, maybe that's a tough thing for them, or that's not something they want to do. So always offer, right, to bring the meal with you or whatever, or you can do it at a restaurant. But we'd like you to kind of have a home visit with them so that you can just, it breaks down walls is what it does. And it helps, you know, in our coaching world, it helps parents look at coaches as partners and not, well, they're the enemy, they're the bad guy, right? Or, you know, yeah, I just sent them up. No, we're partners in this thing. And it builds relationships and breaks down walls and builds bridges. And so that's ways that we do it in our program. And sometimes it's just taking the guys out together and eating, because when you're eating, people start, you know, acting a little bit, they let their guard down a little bit.
That's so good. And I know you said this, that's kind of scary. And I think you're absolutely right, because you start to go, hey, I'm going to another level with this family. Like, and if we do that in the workplace, I know that we do that here, you know, at Journey as staff members. I know that, you know, that's like a whole nother level when you start to go to people's homes and break bread and have meals with your, let's say, your employees or your employers. I mean, it changes that dynamic. And I agree. We should not be afraid to do that and to develop those types of relationships, even in the work environment. Does anyone agree or disagree with that, or any other questions before we move on to the next segment?
And don't be scared of Jamie asking you questions. I'm just leaving room for questions in case you have them. I don't need them. I can keep, you know, just keep on going. And so, again, rejecting passivity, empathizing with others. And then the third pillar is accepts responsibility. And as I said, David was the second king of Israel. The first king of Israel was Saul. And when you read the accounts of them, by all accounts, Saul was the one that, man, everybody on the outside, that's the guy. That's the guy. He's the man. He was a military guy. He was good looking. He was tall. All this stuff, had everything. And David was more, they said he was ruddy. He looked like a young boy. All this stuff. So, but I really believe the difference, the fundamental difference between the two, and why David became, you know, the king of Israel and the one that people, you know, still talk about to this day and became in the line of Jesus, was because of the accepting responsibility. And when we talk about real leadership, we talk about being a real woman, being a real man, being a real leader. The A is probably the biggest one that you'll encounter, because we're not, this isn't trying to be perfect. This isn't an expectation of perfect. It's realizing we're going to make mistakes along the way. When you are a rejecting passivity type person, you're an empathizing with others type person, you're going to make mistakes along the way. When you're a leader of companies and leader of organizations, you're going to make mistakes along the way. And the A is so important, because the A is accepts responsibility. It accepts responsibility. It's willing to stand up and say, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. I blew that one there. I got to readjust. I got to change. I got to reinvent the way that I see this thing. And it's being able to stand in front of people and say, okay, clearly I had a bad idea there. What feedback do you have for me so that I can correct it in the future? That's hard to do. And so many times as leaders, we think we got to always be the ones that go, I got it all under control. I don't make mistakes. Everything is good, you know, and I just think that that's a false narrative, and it produces an air around you of people just trying to live up to this standard that's unrealistic. And so when you show them your human side, and after you've made a mistake, and, you know, I always say this, if it's a one-on-one mistake with somebody, fix it one-on-one. Fix it one-on-one. I live in a world where that rarely happens. The mistakes I usually make are public mistakes. Now, it might be directed at one person, right? I might get onto a kid. I might accuse him of doing something the wrong way or whatever it is and get onto him. But I'm doing it in a public setting, either at practice or at a game or whatever it is. So if that happens, I make sure, number one, I go back to that person one-on-one, and talk and tell and ask them to forgive me, apologize, ask them to forgive me, and make sure I give them a chance to give me feedback. And then I then do it publicly in front of those that were there, specifically our team. Now, you can't do it publicly in front of everybody, but specifically our team, those that are in the family of our organization, our team. And so when we make those mistakes, I think one of the biggest, as I said, one of the biggest differences, the fundamental difference between David and Saul was David made a mistake. And when he was confronted with this mistake, he said, man, I made a mistake and I got to correct it, and I'll accept whatever consequences there are. When Saul made his mistake and he was confronted with it, he blamed everybody else. He blamed the person under him. He blamed the person next to him. He blamed the person that had given him his authority. And so I think one of the biggest pillars is accepting responsibility, rejecting passivity, empathizing with others, accepting responsibility. And it's one of the reasons we have so much passivity, because we're afraid of being wrong. We're afraid of making a mistake. And so then we passively sit back when we know that this is going to negatively impact my organization or my life or my marriage or, my relationship with my kids or whatever it may be. We do the passive thing instead of the rejecting passivity, because we're afraid what's going to happen when I make a mistake. If I make a mistake, how am I going to handle that? And so any questions on that?
Any thoughts, any questions?
I just have a comment. This is Doug Dunbar, and I just want to say thank you, Coach Kitna, for speaking to us all. I really appreciate it. I truly believe in humble leadership, and so accepting responsibility speaks right to that. And when you lead humbly and accept responsibility and accept your failures, you're opening up the trust. You're opening up that you're human, and allows everybody else to feel human, and allows everybody else to be accepted. And it's very powerful when you see it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good, John. And I, as you were talking about accepting responsibility, I thought of the various types of leadership, that people can take on. And you see a lot of people, standing there cracking the whip. You'll have that image sometimes of a leader, or as you declared, even like an influencer. We're all influencing somebody in some way, but are we truly using our leadership ability? And those that are willing to get on, the line, stand with the team, work with them, not just always telling them what to do. And I just thought of you earlier today. If you guys don't know this, but I'm texting with John saying, hey, we're going to get on a few minutes early, and we're going to have a little run through with the call. And he said, hey, I'll be there about this time because I've got lunch duty. He's there at his school, accepting his responsibility. He's a teacher and a coach. I mean, I'm pretty sure you don't need to be in the high school ranks coaching for a living, but it's something that you feel called to do, that you feel inspired to do, that you want to lead and you want to model for your teenagers, for the other teachers, for the other athletes on campus. Like, what you do is so much more meaningful than what just being a high school football coach. And by you going in and doing your lunch duty, you're interacting with different folks and modeling for them what it means to accept responsibility, and that you're no different than anybody else, but you're using your platform in a way to inspire others. And I think all these people on this call have that same ability to do that in their areas of influence.
Yeah. And I think, I've been blessed to have an opportunity to, now take over, 4 football programs and be the leader of these programs. And I never wanted to ask people to do something that I wouldn't do myself. And I think that's a mark of a great leader. And so when it's time to clean something up, it's time to organize something, it's time to rearrange something, I want to be the one on the front lines of that, because I think it gives license to everybody else that, man, I can do this too. When the head of your organization is seen doing it, when you're walking down the hallway and you pick up a piece of trash, that piece of trash won't be there the next day, because the people that are underneath you that saw you pick it up go, man, that's important to him, I'm going to do it too. So the last thing is leads courageously. And I in my short lifetime, 48 years, I don't know that there's ever been a better time for this person, the person that leads courageously, right? We're in an unknown world right now where, you know, people that thought they were leaders, people that thought they had it all figured out, that were just kind of on cruise control. The world has been rocked, you know, with what's happened in the last 6 months. And what you're seeing is those that do have that courageous leadership, that aren't afraid to jump out there when it's unknown. There is a huge unknown. We don't ever know if people keep saying, well, when things get back to normal. Well, what is normal? I'm not sure normal's ever returning. It's a new normal that we're having. And what a great opportunity. We describe it as this. One of the things we do early on in our programs is, you know, we'll start working out, we'll do this, we'll do that. And then one of the things we're going to get on the line, we're going to have conditioning. And the first thing hey, get on the line. And inevitably, we'll have 100 kids out there. Inevitably, there'll be 5 kids that will just run and straight get on the line. And the other 95 kids, they're always asking, what are we doing? How many are we doing? How long is this going to take? But they're asking questions. We're looking for the guys that just get on the line, and we'll figure it out as we go, right? David was certainly that kind of leader. He was on the run from Saul. Saul was trying to kill him. He was living homelessly in a cave, and 400 men came to live with him in a cave homelessly. He had nothing to offer him. He was that kind of leader. But I think even more than that, I'd look at the life of Peter when Jesus was the disciples were in the boat, and it said Jesus came walking to them on the water. There was 12 disciples there. And Jesus came walking to them on the water during a storm. And Peter says, Jesus, if that's you, tell me to come to you. And Jesus said, come on. Peter, it says he immediately got out of the boat and started walking. But then he got nervous because he felt the waves splashing against him, and the wind was strong, but he's like figuring out, I'm walking on water. And then he started to doubt when he started to sink. And it said, Jesus pulled him up and he said, you have little faith. Why did you doubt? See, when you're a courageous leader, you're probably going to get coached really hard. You're probably going to get tough reviews. But I'd rather get the tough review because I'm not afraid to jump out there than be the other 11 sitting in the boat. Because if he told Peter, you have little faith, why did you doubt? What was he saying to the other 11 who didn't get out of the boat, right? And so most people, right, they're just too passive. They're so passive that they live in this world that we call it the land of good enough, where it's just, don't rock the boat. Everything's fine. I'm really concerned with comfort. They're not game chasers. They don't move the needle for you. They don't move the needle in your business. We're looking for the ones that, you know what, they might make some mistakes, but they're going to make it zealously in there. And you can help that. You can fix that. When I was playing for the Cincinnati Bengals, I transitioned from my wife and I. When we first got married, before we had kids, we had little miniature dachshunds because they were cute and you have to take care of them too much and all that stuff. Well, then, I was growing. I had kids now, so let's get a lab. And we got this dog. We had this lab, and one of my teammates, when we were in training camp, we stayed in a dorm, and I get this knock on my door, and I open a door to his Rottweiler standing at the door with his paws up, standing at my height, looking me in the eye, and I jump back. I'm scared to death. Well, he brings his dog in, and he's showing me all these tricks. It's a fully trained dog, right? So I'm like, who did that for you? He tells me. So I take my lab, who's 2 years old, take my lab, and I get him trained by the same trainer. And my lab, he was okay. He was okay. He wasn't quite like that dog, whatever. He didn't really have a protective instinct or anything like that. And so I asked the trainer, I said, can you get me another dog? Give me another lab, pick him out, train him up for me. I want to make sure I can protect my kids who are 2 and 3 at the time, right? So he goes and picks this dog, and a year later, I get the dog, and he's fully trained. He's got all. So I asked the question. I said, man, tell me the difference between my lab, the one that won't bite, the one that won't protect, and the one that you picked. He said, well, tell me about how you picked your lab. And I said, well, we took my daughter, we took my son. They're 2 years old, 3 years old. We took them to this house, this breeder. She had about 12 labs. And while we were standing there talking to them, 11 of the dogs were rambunctious and jumping on the kids and knocking them over and all that stuff. And there was one dog that sat right next to my daughter. He said, "Yep, you picked the runt of the litter. You picked him because he was nice." He said, "When we go, we pick the pick of the litter. We pick the most wild dog." He said, "Because you can teach a dog to turn it on and off, but a dog that won't bite, you can never teach a dog that won't bite to bite." And so when you talk about leading courageously, those are the ones we want in our organization. The ones that might take a little bit of extra training, a little bit of extra time on your part to train them up. And they might make some errors along the way, and you're going to have to teach them about accepting responsibility, all this stuff. But you're never going to have to wonder, will they reject passivity? You're never going to have to wonder, will they jump to the front of the line and be on the front lines for you? Those are the ones that you want in your organization, and you have to be that yourself. You have to be willing to jump out there. Right now, in the world that we live in, and the uncertainty that's there, this world is looking for those leaders that lead courageously. And so, again, rejects passivity, empathizes with others, accepts responsibility, leads courageously. Get these 4 pillars, learn them, and just turn them on in your organizations, in your leadership styles, and watch things in your organization start to really blossom, and watch those that are underneath you start to become these kind of leaders as well.
So good, John. Man, thank you so much for sharing that. And I do see Andy's got a question here. Andy, why don't you go ahead and ask your question? Looks like you might have a couple.
Hey, John, how are you?
Great.
Fantastic. Thank you for doing this. Is there a professional mentor in your life that really took these pillars and showed you the reality of them?
Well, our chaplain in Detroit, his name is Dave Wilson, was the first one that taught us these and taught me these in depth. And then when I started coaching, these were the pillars that, like, my whole programs are based on these. We're trying to train these in our players. But the guy who has been my mentor, been the one that, continues to help me in my leadership styles and how do I handle different situations. His name is Eric Bowles, and he's actually an executive coach who trains CEOs and corporate people at Starbucks and different banks and things like that. And he just came out with a book not too long ago as well. But he's the one that has been, we walk and we do life together. And he's the one that really kind of trains me and teaches me.
Great. If you have a question, don't hesitate here, guys. I know every time I talk with John, I just love picking his brain and hearing more. Sometimes we get scared, John, of those dogs that'll bite, right? Those guys and gals that are really sharp. Maybe they're, as you described them, in leading courageously at the end there, they're on the edge sometimes. They're not always falling in line and fitting in. They're sometimes doing their own thing. They kind of get off track, like you said. Sometimes you got to reel them back in. But why are those kind of folks so important to an organization, and why help everyone understand? There's a tendency, I think, to maybe like get rid of them because they go against sometimes the curve, or they're innovative and they're, you know what I mean? What I'm trying to say, like, how do we engage those kind of folks?
Yeah.
And empower them?
Well, first of all, that's, comes down to our own confidence in our own mission and what our vision is for things, and making sure that we're convicted in that. But then we have to understand, with those kind of people in our organization, we're only going to have them for a short amount of time. So we have to figure out a way to get the most out of them for our organization. And so when I say you're only going to have them for a short amount of time, here's the 2 ways that you're going to, they're not going to be in your organization anymore. You don't train them, you don't invest in them, and you have to fire them. Or you train them and you invest in them so that they go out and run their own companies and they go out and do their own thing. Either way, you're only going to have them for a short amount of time. And that's how those, that's the way I look at some of my coaches. Is these guys are, I call them force multipliers. They're not addition, they're multiplication people. And they're going to do things, but you have to give them space. You have to give them responsibilities that go above and beyond what they're being paid to do. Because when you do that, not only is your company going to flourish and benefit from that, but they are as well. And they'll remember that. And all great leaders are looking to reproduce themselves. And we always trying to get better, but we can't be intimidated by them. They might be better than you. They might, but the reality is it's your company. You're leading it. So they're going to be better than you somewhere else. But you might as well get the benefit of them while you have them. Or if you ignore it, or, you don't invest in it, you're going to end up having to fire them because they're going to be probably insubordinate.
Yeah, such a great point. I mean, sometimes we get intimidated, right? Or thinking that they're better. And that's what we want. We want people that are better than us in our organization, leading different areas, give them a lane to run in and empower them to go. Because otherwise they're going to get frustrated and want to leave. Like you said, look for a better opportunity or somewhere they can be themselves. And so